Every producer knows that feeling whenever you have a finished 8-bar whoop which is sounding so insane that you just sit and whoop it again, but you don't know how to take it from there. And in today's video I'm gonna be showing you how to range your samples, how to range your beats, whether it's for YouTube, whether it's for placements. So without too much talk, let's just get into the video. Now before we move on to the beats, let's start with the sample arrangements. So how do you arrange a sample? Now there are a lot of different ways to arrange samples, but I'm gonna show you the proven method, which is like probably the most effective way to go about it without, just thinking too hard about arrangement. So here I have a sample from one of my other videos. There's something which I do which is basically starting the arrangement before I even, begin the arrangement. And what I mean by that is whenever I'm making the sample and I'm choosing all the layers which I'm gonna be using, I always make sure that every single layer can be something on its own. Whenever I'm making samples, subconsciously, I'm just grouping the layers in different sections. So for the first layer, I usually have something which is like the main idea, the base of the whole sample. And in this case, it's gonna be this piano chord progression. Basically, this is the layer which is going to be present in every single section throughout the whole beat, throughout the whole sample. Now, the second layer out of the whole group is going to be the accent layer. So this would be textures, accents, something which is ear candy and in the background. And this layer is not going to be in every single section, but if you want to switch it up in a very subtle way, for example, you want to differentiate like the first 8-bar of a verse and the second 8-bar of a verse, you can just have the piano layer, and in the second 8-bar, you're just gonna add the accents with the piano. So it's gonna be a very slight change, but it's gonna be the accent group which is gonna be, adding to the layer or taking away from the layer. So in the sample, it's gonna be these two layers. And now for the third group of layers, this is going to be the main melody or, the top line melody. And in this case, I don't have a specific top line melody, but instead I have this vocal layer. So I just have these two vocals, which basically act as the top line melody. Now this is going to be the second most important part. And as I mentioned, the accent parts, we can use them to switch up the verse, just to differentiate the whole thing. But this group with the main melody, the top line melodies, this is what we're gonna be using to differentiate the two hooks. So for example, you have a 16-bar hook. In one part, you're gonna have one of the top line melody layers, and in the other part, you're just gonna add the second one. And this is gonna help the arrangement be built in a way where you have a verse which it's a verse because it doesn't have any of the top line melody layers, and also you can add more variation to the hook. So for example, here in the hook, I'm gonna have in the first part the background vocal layer, and in the second part, the second 8 bars of the hook, I'm gonna be adding the main vocals. And finally, for the final layer, this is gonna be the low end, so basically the bass line. And people, whenever they're using whoops, they tend to either cut out the whole low end part of the sample just to add 808s and all that stuff, or they keep it and they use it as a sub bass with a kick. But either way, as I said, you want to have all the elements in the first 8 bars, so the bass line is going to be there. And you can just keep adding the low end throughout the whole sample, taking it away. Now moving on to the specific arrangement, I usually go for 5 sections. So I have an intro section which is gonna be 8 bars. Right after that I have a hook which is 2 different parts, as I said, 8 bars each, or 16 total. And finally for the verse, once again I have 16 bars, 8 bars for the first part and 8 bars for the second part of the verse. And here I have them labeled, so we have the intro, 8 bars, all of the sections. Here we have the hook, 16 bars with 2 different switch ups. So basically we have the top line melody group, split by 2 layers here and here. And then we have the verse, which is again 16 bars, 2 different sections. And we're using the accent layer to, just do a little subtle switch up. And this is basically the whole arrangement of the sample, and I apply this to every single sample of mine. There's something else which you should be adding to every single sample that you ever make, and that's gonna be the stems at the end, just to make it a little bit more easy to use. Even though like using this method, I know for a fact that because I've asked everybody who uses my samples, they said that even this 5-section arrangement is pretty much perfect and they almost never use my stems. However, you should always be doing this, just having every single layer at the end of the sample. And what I like doing is every 2 bars add this hi-hat, so that way whenever you drag in the whole sample you can see like where each layer starts and where it finishes. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole thing about samples, sample arrangement. So let's move on to beats. There's arrangement for placements, you know, if you're sending out to artists, if you want to catch their ear and, you know, maximize the amount of placements that you get whenever an artist hears your beat. And there's the other arrangement, which is for YouTube, and where your goal is completely different, so you're aiming to maximize the whole watch time of the video so it does better. So in the first case, you're almost always gonna start with the drums. They're gonna start the moment they press play, and that's just gonna help the artist, you know, get a good idea of what the beat is about. And artists, whenever they hear a beat in the first 5 seconds, they decide whether they want to use it or not. And when it comes to YouTube type beats, you would usually want to drag out the intro as long as possible, because whenever people are listening and they're looking for beats, they would usually give you like 20 to 30 seconds before, you know, they skip. So let's start for the arrangement for placements. I'm gonna show you an example. Here's a beat which is arranged with vocals, and you know, it's made in the most optimal way, so whenever an artist hears it in their email or, you know, somebody send it to their phone, they're gonna know what the beat is about, like instantly. They can instantly catch a vibe. So right off the bat, the first 5 to 10 seconds, we're starting with the drums on. In these initial first 7 seconds, you get the perfect idea of what the beat is about, if it's your style, if it's not. Like, this is the best way to go about it. Now, what I like doing after that is basically taking out the drums. I would usually place my tag and, you know, just let the melody take over. And right after that, I always start with the hook. So that's either gonna be 8 bars or 16 bars depending on the BPM. So anything up until 135 BPM is gonna be a little bit slower, so usually that would be just 8 bars for the hook, and anything past that is usually gonna be double time, so it's gonna be 16 bar hooks. It's very important to start with the hook, because if you listen to majority of these songs, like almost every song starts with the hook nowadays, and that's because people have a very low attention span, and you know, everybody wants to maximize the streaming platform money, and especially with TikTok being so popular, like everybody wants to that 10-15 seconds to instantly hit. Like everybody wants the good part, like right now. So yeah, make sure that you have the drums right off the bat, then you let the melody breathe a little bit for like 5 seconds, and right after that you always drop it into the hook.
I would still be around Mercedes. I knew it was so related. No, bitch was overrated.
Of course, after that, you're gonna move on to the verse. Verse is a little bit more tricky. Some artists prefer like longer verses, some want them a little bit more short. I'm gonna show you this method, which, you know, I've been using a lot, and it's probably the best way to approach learning how to arrange beats for artists. What you're gonna do first is you're gonna look at the BPM and, you know, just the general vibe of your beat and the artist that you're making the beat for. After that, you're gonna open up this website which is called TuneBat, and basically what it does is it just shows you the key, the BPM, and what you can do here is you can just type in the artist which you're making the beat for. For example, in my case, it was an Isaiah Rashad type beat, and then you can see all of the beats which are in the similar BPM range. And for example, I can just Control F and search 127, which is the BPM of my beat, and here's this song which I used the acapella from. So basically what you're gonna do next is you're just gonna download this song, you're just gonna take the song, you're just gonna drag it in, and then you can use the FL Studio stem extraction tool, and you're gonna get the vocals, the melody, and the drums. And from here on now, you can just keep listening and, you know, just copying the whole arrangement. And in this case, like, I noticed that this song had a 24 bar verse, which is a little bit longer. So this is what I did here. Like basically I just copied the exact same song structure, and if you keep doing this trick, you're actually gonna get a very good understanding of how songs are actually arranged. Another reason why acapellas are extremely underrated and they're very helpful is it's gonna give you an idea whether the beat that you're using is way too overcrowded. If it doesn't work with artist vocals, that means that you have just too much going on, whether it's in the sample or the drums. So what I like doing is I always pull up an acapella and I just double check. And now let's move on to arrangement for type beat channels and just YouTube in general. When it comes to YouTube type beat arrangements, your main goal is to just increase your watch time of the video. So the longer the people spend on your beat just watching and freestyling, the better the beat is gonna perform. Probably the most important part of the whole beat for YouTube specifically is gonna be the intro. So what you want to do is you want to do everything in your best ability to just extend it so it hits at least 25 to 30 seconds. There are a couple of ways to do this. My most favorite one is just using automations and basically a low pass filter. Again, we're starting with the drums first and then we're letting it breathe. But in this case, we're not doing this in 8 bars, but we're doing this over 16 bars. So it's gonna be 8 bars for the drums versus 4, and it's gonna be 8 bars for the melody. And here we have this automation. So it's just building up. Then we have the melody. And then we finally have the drop. So like even before you know it, you can see 30 seconds have passed and the artist is just listening and they already gave us 30 seconds. So YouTube is gonna see this and it's gonna start pushing your beats more and more. The next trick I can give you when it comes to arrangement for YouTube type beats, basically you just wanna keep the beat the same throughout almost the entirety of the song. The reason behind that is you don't want to do things which are gonna just throw off the artist, because usually whenever people go on YouTube, they start freestyling to the beats. The longer they freestyle, the longer they're gonna watch your videos, and that's why some beats just explode and they have those insane watch times, because artists, they just love these beats and they just keep freestyling on the beat. So yeah, you just want to make subtle changes but keep it the same like throughout the whole entirety of the beat. What I like doing is I would usually have 16 bar hooks again, but I would just leave the exact same thing. After that I would make a little switch up, maybe take out the hi-hats, just add a little bit more automation. So for example here, like again, I have this low pass filter automation. Then we bring it back, like it just switches it up, but it's basically the same thing. Then we take it out again, and this time it's for the entirety of the 16 bars. So basically this is gonna be the verse. And for the last 4 bars, again, we have this drop, which is just gonna help build up the hook. Do the same exact section, and then you want to automate it, you want to take out things, you want to add things, but basically just keep the exact same thing just flowing and flowing and flowing. And before I finish the video, I want to show you this other example, which is extremely helpful, especially if you're somebody who samples a lot for your type beat channel. My favorite thing to do is basically I would just grab the sample, I would chop it up, I would have the main melody right here. That perfect 4 or 8 bar chop, which would usually get from the sample. After that, if you want to increase the intro, so basically you just have 8 bars which repeat throughout the whole sample. So it would be a little bit too much if you would use that even in the intro. So what I like doing is I would chop the sample and I would take a big chunk of the whole sample and I would low pass it again with using automations, and I would just let it play out for like 16 bars. So basically we're just doing a cool intro, which is a little bit more sampled. And again, we're getting 20 to 30 seconds of watch time. So here's the sample without any effects. basically this is the chop which I sampled. And then I have this section, which is further in the song, which I chopped up, and this is what it sounds without any effects. And what I did next was I pulled up the CQ and I just filtered the sample. So now I have it playing like that. Now it's gonna sound like this. And another thing which is gonna make the intro sound even better is you want to use the parts of the sample where they have a drum roll or, you know, just any drum break. So for example, in the last 4 bars we have this. Once I filtered this out, I added this. And once you overlay on the top of this sample part, it's gonna sound like this. And it's gonna make the drop way better. So yeah, that's pretty much it as far as arrangement goes. I hope you found this video helpful. Catch you in the next one.